Hello and welcome to the third installment of the two Bro Natty Pro podcast with myself, Dr. Andrew Chappell, and of course, the British Charles Glass himself, James Melville, is in the building. Today, James, I have no jacket on, no blazer. I'm gracing you with my sleeveless outfit. You're better dressed than me today.
It's just because you're so buff, mate. You know what I mean? I
Something
was
like that.
actually
Yeah, I came
expecting you to.
straight from the
I
gym.
was expecting you to. I was expecting you to cut the sleeves off that wee smoker's jacket you were wearing the other week. You know what I mean? That'd be a good look.
I don't know if it would, right? There's some sort of
Yeah,
weird Mad Max look, perhaps.
yeah. Hair down. I'm thinking your hair down, waving in the
Oh,
wind. Smoker's
yes.
jacket cut off at the sleeves. Fat ass cigar. That would have like sort of WWE vibes. I think.
And we discussed this. I was in the WWF style wrestling, so I could
Yeah.
definitely do that. So since the last time we chatted, right? I put it to you. I was like, well, we have a new prime minister. Will Hearts win the league? Well, we don't have a new prime minister, and my football team got beat. And I was genuinely crying, James. Genuinely crying.
Your prediction has been quite poor, to be fair, because you also
Yes.
said Spurs were going to get relegated.
Oh, fuck, I lost a tenner.
Yeah, and that's hard. I know that's hard for a Scotsman. You know,
I once dropped a pound coin. I bent down to pick it up and it hit me in the back of the head. Um,
I love a good stereotype.
it's so true with me. I'm sorry. I can't help it. So you've been in Budapest. To tell us about that briefly, because I'm quite jealous, actually. Budapest looks great. Paul's wanted to go.
Yeah, I would say honestly, like myself and Adele has been quite fortunate. We've did a lot of sort of city breaks,
Mm,
loads and loads, and honestly, we've been to Budapest before, like 22, 23, somewhere in there. We also always said we'd go back. We didn't feel like we had enough time. Um, Adele didn't get to go into the zoo as well back then, so she was gutted. So we said, right, we'll book it again at some point. So we went. We'd also gone over there to try out some gym equipment, a
hmm
little bit of new tech stuff, and a few other bits and pieces for potentially for the gym. So it was a wee bit of work meeting up with a couple of reps. Other than that, we just did a lot of touristy stuff. We packed it, pretty much. We were only
Yep.
there on the Monday morning. We left on Thursday morning, and it was phenomenal, mate. Honestly, so obviously I've been prepping for nine, ten
Yeah, I was
weeks,
going
and
to ask you about this. Go on.
the protocol we had sort of says like, well, I started prep early to get myself ahead to make sure that I'm going to
Yeah.
function well at the back end
hmm
for clients. The phrase that I use is I don't want to be digging my own dietary hole while I'm helping them dig theirs. So I kind of want to make
Yeah.
sure that the back of prep, I'm just feeling great while they're all maybe pushing for their last little bit. So
hmm
um, the other part of that deal was I said if we book somewhere to go away for a couple of days, if I'm hitting, if I'm at X body weight and the conditions looking good, then I can have maybe an off-plan meal while I'm away, and that's what we did, and it was extraordinary. So I would recommend like Budapest to anybody. Probably our favorite city break across Europe, and we've done like I don't know, well, obviously Munich, Vienna, Krakow, Prague, loads and loads of places. Budapest for me has just stood out, and we've actually said we'll probably go back again next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's an old place as well, right? I mean, it's part of the
Mm.
Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is a forerunner to the Habsburg Empire, right? So it's medieval. It's been around for a very long time, and it's got
Oh
that
yeah,
Renaissance element as well, right? So it's probably beautiful. It's probably
yeah.
like spot on.
The last night we sat in this like White Raven Sky Bar, which is part of like the Hilton,
Ooh.
and it is without a doubt the best viewpoint across the whole of Budapest. We had a couple of meals at the like high bars that you had nice views. The White Raven at Hilton just is incredible. Anybody that goes there, you got to book it. The food was phenomenal. It's all
So
small
what did you
bites.
have? Because you're in Hungary. You have to have a Hungarian dish, surely. So tell us about that.
No,
No?
no, I
What did you
didn't
have
do the
it?
Hungarian because the last time we were over, we did all the authentic Hungarian stuff, and I
Ah,
was
right,
like, yeah,
okay.
I'm not going to waste my 1 or 2 meals off plan with
Yeah.
something that's just for the sake of it. So we went there and it was a wee bit more sort of fine dining, starting off with
I
what
like
did I
fine
have? We
dining.
had beef.
That's the way to go.
They had this beef tartare. The way that it was seasoned and
Oh,
prepared was absolutely incredible, and that was one of the starters. So it sort of says like picks, 6 or 7 small meals, and it was nice to be able to do those things. Pairing that with some really nice wine, and then finish the night off with a Middleton very rare cask. It was a 2022, I believe, whiskey with a beautiful cigar overlooking Budapest.
oh, what was the
Life was
whiskey? 22-year-old. What was it?
no. It's a so Middleton very rare Irish whiskey is definitely one of the
Oh, right.
top whiskies in
Okay.
Ireland. But every year they have a limited release, so like they call it
Okay.
the very rare range. So like
Right. Right.
22,
Okay.
23, 24, 25, 26.
Right.
This
Very,
was a
very right. So
22, which is
literally.
yeah, the 22 is probably my favorite. So whenever I seen it on the thing, it was quite expensive, but it was definitely worth. I went if I'm going to have a nice cigar with the best company, Edel, looking over the most beautiful, spectacular view. I'm going to enjoy this cigar only with a great whiskey, and that's how we finished the last night that we were in Budapest. So beautiful.
It sounds good. I mean, you've got to enjoy the little things in life, right? And you've got to enjoy these moments. It's proof as well that, look, see, because you're on prep, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that all these things have to stop. And I always kind of talk about not being an absolute martyr. As long as you take the right dietary approach, whereby you give yourself enough time, then you can have these little isolated breaks here and there, which keep you sane. However, if you start late and your starting point's not good, then you need every single week. And then it becomes highly stressful and it comes to your point about digging. Is that kind of what you think about it as well?
Mate, 100%. Like one of
Yeah,
the
so you're the
phrases I
same.
heard a few months back which was incredible, and I was like, that just sort of summarizes it, is
Mm.
discipline gives you freedom. So
Yeah,
most
that's
people,
like Jocko Wilkes. Yeah.
right? So most people are on the other side of it. They think discipline means you have to do without, but the discipline of starting my prep early, the discipline of getting my physique into an advanced stage of prep. I know that
Yeah.
I'm multiple weeks ahead of schedule to bring that absolute peak condition to the stage. That discipline, that early start, gives me the opportunities like we had last week, and I'll probably have time for one more, maybe not as uh, extraordinary as that, but we'll be able to probably have a little bit of an off plan at some point, over these next weeks because of that discipline getting started early. So yeah, 100%. I think as long as I would say to anybody that questions it, if I walk on stage this year and I'm not in condition, you can tell me I'm wrong.
You're going to be, I've never seen you not in condition. Can I just share this photo, by the way? I seen this on
Yeah.
my Instagram the other day there, right? I was like, fucking hell, James, you're looking good, right? That's about
Oh,
22-year-old Milton Cass, very, very rare. I mean, not bad,
yeah.
right? Not bad.
That's not
So,
bad.
not bad. The shape is quality, man. You're in good shape. Fucking hell. You're
Yeah.
looking good. You're looking good. So what was I thinking here then? So we got some great feedback from our last podcast that we've done. Guys, if you haven't checked them out already, go and check out episode 1 and episode 2. Check out the clips we've put up as well. I really enjoyed the last episode. Just hearing all about your journey from start to finish and the evolution of James Melville and where you're at just now. We also talked a little bit about like sort of useful supplements. We had a little chat about bikini training, and in the first episode, we also chatted a little bit about progressive overload philosophies as well. James, I know you've got some questions in mind for this particular podcast we're going to do, but I thought we shall see what I've been up to as well at the same time. I'm going to do a contest this weekend. Just going
Yeah.
to do it.
Do you know, I was thinking about this the other day. So just to give context to this, your
Yeah,
first show scheduled is September time.
yeah.
Um,
Probably be even later potentially, but yeah. September time
Yeah.
was like the
So
first real serious one.
I also have to give two ends to this kind of scenario.
Sure.
Andrew, you competed last season, got into lifetime best condition. Even the
Yeah.
photos that you put up, I don't know if you've got them handy. You could pop them up on the screen. But
Oh, I could bring
the
in.
photos, the Swiss one that you put up yesterday, and just that sort of even the video of you backstage, or I think it was maybe.
Oh yeah, I put up
Um,
some today. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and the condition, the fullness, that peak went so well. Um, I just as we went through that peak, I just seen the body becoming. We just walked that line almost perfectly, I think. And
Here you go. There's me
let's
backstage.
see,
Yeah.
let's have a look at this.
Can you see that?
So yeah, that's it up. Just such. I know the
Great
lighting's not
fullness and clean
perfect, but
lines.
look at the fullness, the balance, the yeah. For me, I just absolutely love that look. And I have
Yeah,
to
it was a
say,
good
the
look.
stage and obviously at the Swiss show is extremely good as well, which really showcase your physique on stage. But the detail there, down through the serratus, nice fullness evident through the shoulders, triceps, just really clean lines, man. And even from the back, I just think that looks so polished. Yeah.
Fucking hell, look at that lower back.
Woo.
Jeez,
That's
so
tasty, man, honestly. So,
yeah,
like, whenever we sort of we consider that, so that was the first. Yeah, look at that. Oh, the fullness in the shoulders, man. That gets me fired up. Incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It
So
was a good look. But so that was last year, coming off of last year. So we were saying,
yeah, so you coming off that last year, and then you'd sort of went, look, that prep went really well. The back end of it, I might do something I don't generally do, and go back
do
season.
it
So
again.
we kind of had like a rough plan as to what the sort of process would look like in off season, giving you that sort of flexibility. We need that sort of reasonably good turnaround time. And then whenever I came to you early, I says, look, I think if you're going to do this, we'll probably need to start a little bit earlier.
Yep.
But I asked you clearly, psychologically, how do you feel? Do you actually feel ready to go back into a prep? Because then we talked about the two options that we have. We hold off on it, keep you in off season, and
Mm,
then diet with a little bit more extreme, with a little bit more precision. Or we start a bit early to give you some of these little diet breaks. And you
yeah.
were like, no, I think I'm ready to go. So to say that, then we've tidied up. The condition from the start of prep has been phenomenal. And then
Mm,
Andrew says the other week that he's going to jump into a NABA show. Burmite, September's the due date to walk on, and he's going on stage this weekend. How many bodybuilders? I don't even know if I would have the balls to do that. I don't think I would. But yeah, that's obviously your confidence in even with that level of condition currently. How good do you actually look?
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, gosh, there's so many things to unpick there, um, with it. So the background of it. My friend Tim runs an event, the NABA Northwest, and is the chairman of NABA along with another chap called Mark Taylor. And I've done NABA a number of times in the past, the classic class at the NABA Universe. And I noticed that the NABA Worlds was taking place in June or July, and I kept badgering him, being like, "Give me an invite, right? Give me an invite. Let me just do it." And he tried and tried to pull some strings, but he was like, look, the board have been like, I can't give out invites. But if you come and do this show and you're good enough, then I'll give you an invite to the World's End. So looking at it, I'm like, am I good enough to qualify? Oh, maybe. So I just thought, you know what? I'll just give it a go. I think I'm probably 85 to maybe 90% there because I have done really well from the start of this prep to where I'm at
Yeah,
just now. And I probably say I'm maybe close to, if not in similar condition to what I was for the guest spot that I did at Ireland last year
yeah,
at this point now.
yeah,
So, and I know that that's a good package. I just know that that's a
yeah,
good package, and it's probably better than a lot of amateur bodybuilders, because NABA ultimately is the National Amateur Bodybuilding Association's look. So I mean, it's a gamble, it's a risk. If nothing else, I'll have some fun doing it and everything like that, being on stage. But the goal is to try and be good enough to qualify for that contest, which is a few months down the line, and just give it a go, right? And see what, and it'll be a good warm up if nothing else as well, because I'll still try and do a guest spot closer to the show in September if I can find one. But I don't think anything quite ups your game in terms of that stage presentation element than being on stage, because I can practice with my stopwatch as much as I want in my bedroom here or in the studio, but you're never quite squeezing the muscles quite as hard as you need to, and nothing will hone you quite like competition in terms of sharpening that knife and getting the tools ready. Yeah, because I know after I do this contest this weekend, whatever the outcome is, I'll probably look at some guys and think, right, it's time to up the game, yeah, as well, and that element with the training, the dieting, and the posing from there as well. And then the final part of this is, and you were talking about this discipline sets you free. And maybe it was after the conversation you had the other day there, or maybe I mentioned it already, but just remembering that it's not always about the outcome, which is the competitions, but also the process. And I was in the gym the other day there and going, I love this stuff. How fortunate am I that I get to train like a professional athlete and do this all the time? What a privileged position am I in to do it? So when I was thinking about doing the back-to-back years of competing, I was like, no, it's time to just live like the athlete for the next 3 years and just do it, or maybe next two. I'll see how I feel about doing this stuff there after that. So yeah, that's the plan. I've got my tanning product here on the desk with me. Shout out to Muscle Tan UK. I'm gonna have to shave myself and everything like that and get ready. And I should say that when we've discussed this, I'm not planning on doing anything different. I'm just gonna keep following the diet, because
Yeah.
this is just like an on the way sort of thing. So the diet's not going to change or anything like that. It'll just be continue to diet as is, not trying to do any peaking plans. I'll maybe drink a little bit more water and not eat as much in the morning. That seems
Yeah.
sensible, right? So there we go. That's
Yeah.
what I'm doing. So the goal is try and sneak in, get an invite, and then sneak off.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. Like, I'm actually looking forward to that. I knew you talked about doing it, and then the other day, whenever you had said, and then I hadn't realized that it was actually this weekend. I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
So,
kind
like,
of came up fast, right?
I think that's actually just what we can, just a nice little segue into. We'll keep it short though.
Go for it.
Um, that conversation about peaking methods and
Yes.
the importance of getting it right. And a phrase that I use with pretty much every client is, we can only peak with what you bring. So, like, at the start of that week, if somebody isn't in perfect condition, going through that carb loading, trying to manipulate water, whether you're manipulating potassium, sodium, all those concepts, tend to not have a great impact on a physique that's not conditioned.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
as we, yeah, as we know, the more that you saturate with carbohydrates, if your condition isn't in, then you're going to lose any detail that you potentially have in the
Mm.
muscle. And then you could potentially just look like a little bit of a water balloon, because the skin thickness is going to be a little bit thicker in certain areas around the
Mm-hmm.
glutes, even around the sides, the lower back, etc. So quite often a peak could actually just hurt the look more than it helps. So sometimes it's better to run a little bit flat. Whenever you're peeled to the absolute, so then we look at being peeled, 10 being the most peeled, 7 being still pretty peeled. If we imagine from 7, 8, 9, 10, for me, the leaner or more conditioned somebody is, the longer that they have been really conditioned, then probably the more important that protocol becomes. So maybe
Yeah,
even more
I agree with
elevation of
that.
carbohydrates. Yeah,
Yeah, I
because
100%.
if you're hyper conditioned and hyper detailed in your physique, you can trade off 10% of the lines or striations in favor of 20% more fullness, and that is a very good trade-off. So you have to kind of know what you're peaking. So that's why, if you're peaking the same athlete at consecutive shows, but each show they're more conditioned, then the protocol will most likely slightly change as you go through those phases. So what do you think about that?
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, a few things I would say is this is semantics really more than anything, but I'm such a pedant because I'm a scientist, right? And we like to put things into boxes, right? And when we talk about peaking, peaking is just about producing the best look for a show. So that is ultimately what we mean by peaking. So if you do a strategy whereby you diet even harder for the whole week to come into that show, but you don't carb load, that's technically still a peak, yeah? So I get uncomfortable about terms when people say, well, peaking doesn't work or stuff like that, because often they mean carb loading or something like that. But it's just about if you change the approach for the final week for the show to maximize look, then that is a peak. But I agree, yeah, I agree. If you're not in shape, then a carbohydrate loading strategy is probably not the way to go. Probably just that final week before, making sure that you're rested enough so that you don't look fatigued on stage. And if you can do anything that's just going to allow you to get tighter, then that's probably what you should be prioritizing, because the carb loading, as you say, isn't going to be necessarily that effective. In terms of that analogy that you're talking about being the 7, 8, 9, 10 of levels of conditioning, yes, as well, because you might lose 10 to 20% of your lines. And is that worth doing? Well, it depends on the individual, because what we're then talking about is looks and what look suits you best. Maybe you are better just being a little bit fuller without those lines, and that helps your symmetry, or maybe you actually play the game which is be totally shredded. So you're talking about manipulating looks there, yeah, and that's a trade-off game
Yeah.
that you're playing at the end of the day. So yeah, I think we agree. Yeah, I think we agree. Um, where people kind of get it wrong, oh gosh, I've written scientific papers on this, and go check it out. Peak week strategies of natural bodybuilders, where I surveyed almost 100 bodybuilders and the approaches that people utilize to get themselves in shape for competition. So what I'm going to just bring this paper up actually because I can. Right, let's see. Let's bring this up on here just as a plug while we've got it on here. So here you go. Here's PubMed peak week strategies of bodybuilders. So you can go and check that out, folks. You can read that in your own time. From there, I'll maybe pull out some data on here. Where people get it wrong is they make the peak week the first time they've ever practiced it, and they do mental things like, well, I've not eaten this all the way through my diet, and then in the final week they just put it in there. Like, oh, I'm going to eat pasta all this week. It's like, well, have you eaten any bread or any pasta or any wheat or anything like that for the months prior? No. So why are you trying it now?
Yeah.
Or I'm going to
One
start
of
to
the
include
one
dairy.
of the other things is whenever you get people the night before, you're talking about. I think you'll probably be in alignment with me. I
Yeah,
kind of like if I'm doing a peak week with somebody, I like the numbers, I like the analytics, I like the control of the variables. So it means
yeah,
then if
because
you land the look, then you can, literally align maybe the next peak, something like
100%,
that.
yeah, you can
So
manipulate them.
right. So you get some coaches maybe the night before, and they're telling their clients to go out, maybe drink a bottle of wine, like go to McDonald's. This has actually happened
How many
very
calories do you think
recently.
are in a bottle of wine? 750 mil. I mean, fucking hell.
Yes. So you have well at least if somebody drank a bottle of wine, it'd be easy to track the calories. But if they're going to McDonald's and having a Big Mac and X amount of fries and this, that, whatever else, which this
Yeah,
person was also told to do, for me, those are variables that you can't really log that data. So you end up landing on the perfect look, but you're like going, what was it exactly that made that look that look? And for me, that's the issue that I have. And the same happens then on
I
show
agree.
day morning, where coaches are looking at their clients and going, "Oh, you look flat. I want you to go to McDonald's and get some fries with some salt on it."
Yeah,
And again, I hate that because there's just too much looseness with it. Instead, if you were thinking sodium is maybe the cure for what I'm looking at, then you should already have that pre-planned. There should be
Yeah,
that person has access to other meals which are controlled that have X amount of sodium on it, so at least you can uh, reciprocate and do those things, replicate those things, sorry, again and again if necessary. So
yeah,
how do you feel about that?
hundred
Coaches
percent.
giving the
Like,
McDonald's treatment.
I completely agree. Because otherwise, you're a cowboy. You're a complete cowboy. How do you manipulate the variables? As you say, at
Yeah,
least if you've got 5 grams of salt with you and someone takes that 5 grams of salt and you get a good look, then the next week you can try 6 grams of salt, 7 grams of salt. You can
that's all it
manipulate
is.
that. I worked at McDonald's. I also worked in Pizza Hut, by the way,
Yeah.
and at a hot dog place. There's probably the joke right themselves on that one, right? But you know.
I thought you were more of like a wimpy kind of guy.
I didn't expect the joke to go down that route. I thought you were just going to make some sort of homophobic remark. Anyway,
No, sure, we did that in the last episode. So
yes, 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 of course. Of course. No, I completely agree. I completely agree. But try things out in the weeks that run up before. I mean, just as a case study, I've got a client who's competing in a few weeks' time. And we all we've done over the last few weeks is, and we've not tried to do anything crazy with him, is we've said the show day is Sunday. So for 3 weeks, what we've done is we've changed around his diet from having lower calorie days at the start of the week to higher calorie days at the end of the week, tracked how he's looked, and then we've added a little bit more carbohydrate one over a few days, seeing if that's made a difference, taken some out, put in more sodium, taken some out, put in more fluids, taken some out. Because, for example, initially I had him drinking 78 litres of water. Then now he's down to 5 to 6 litres of water, and we've noticed that the look doesn't change with more water. So why make him suffer with having more water if he doesn't have to,
yeah,
for example? James, would you like to see commonly utilized peaking strategies by bodybuilders? I think you'll
of
find this
course.
interesting. So this is from the paper that I showed earlier on. And I know you said let's make this quick, but we're not doing that. So here you go. This is these are the prevalence of peaking strategies amongst bodybuilding populations. So you've got 81 athletes, right? And you've got carbohydrates, water, sodium, right? And these are things that people do. So you've got what people do with restriction and loading, or if they do them both, loading and restriction, or if they do them both, sodium if they restrict and load if they do them both, and then vitamin C, regular diet, or some sort of other strategy. And I'll just pull out some highlights for you, okay? And I'm not going to break it down by males and females, but of the cohort, 82%, almost 83% of athletes do some sort of carbohydrate loading. Yeah, interesting. 55% do some sort of carbohydrate restriction. Or sorry, rather both, right? So carbohydrate loading and restriction are probably your most common strategy, followed by water loading. Thereafter that, about 20% do some sort of sodium loading. And then if you come all the way down to the end, you can see only around about 6.2% of people do some sort of just following the regular diet. So when people talk about peaking, it not working or whatever, um, most people are doing some sort of peak. They just are.
Yeah,
You're saying like only 1 in 20 aren't peaking. And most people are loading up on a little bit more carbohydrate, maybe restricting a little bit, probably earlier on in the week, and probably manipulating water. And there's what a sort of strategy conceptually looks like. I'm sure you'll be familiar with that kind of concept on that. And you can
yeah,
make that as extreme or non-extreme as you want. I mean, a common one I hear about is carbohydrate loading, and people talk about loading, and they'll maybe have, I don't know, over 3 days, maybe 400 or 500 to 700 grams of carbohydrate. And then I've got to sort of explain to them that, well, do you know what? On a regular day, that's less than maybe only about 250 grams of carbohydrates. So you're talking about being flat
yeah,
and worrying about why you're not full. Well, the reality is the reason you've had to go and get that McDonald's and those chips is because you're not even touching the sides in terms of loading up carbohydrates, right? Because if you consider that your liver and your muscles combined can contain around about 600 grams of carbs, given a super compensation, why would you assume that you've even consumed enough carbohydrate when you're factoring in exercise, and you're factoring in daily activity, and you're factoring in trying to be full at the same time? So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Any remarks on
Yeah.
that before I move off on this?
Yeah. So like just to explain to people, obviously you can see here there's a depletion strategy followed by a
Yeah,
front loading protocol,
yeah,
tapering the carbohydrates up to tapering the carbohydrates down until show day.
yeah,
A lot of times, to be honest, I use backloading quite frequently with clients. I feel, me personally, that I understand people end up doing the front load protocol after depletion because they sort of sign into the insulin sensitivity in pursuit of that super compensation to maximize
yeah.
the amount of glycogen stored. And I think with a lot of people, that can be a little bit of a risk. If you're completely peeled inside out, I do think the front loading strategy can work very, very easy, like almost like overfilling to the point of
It
spilling.
absolutely works better
Yeah,
if you're super, super peeled, because generally speaking, your carbohydrate stores are very often more depleted. And as a
yeah,
consequence, your carbohydrate storage enzymes are more sensitive and liable to take up the carbohydrates. So yes, sorry, I thought that was an
can
important.
you see me on the screen?
I can see you very, very clear. No problem at
Okay,
all. Don't worry about
okay. Yeah, so like quite often I would use like sort of backloading strategies. I feel that I've a lot of success. If somebody I feel is a bit of a risk in terms of digestive processes, then
that.
potentially that front load option is quite good. Like last thing you want to be doing is having really high food intake with somebody that has gastrointestinal issues, historical bloating, etc. as well. You know, bad sort of sensory feedback through that digestive tract, and then the next day you have them
Yeah.
ranting on stage. So I think there's arguments for both methods. And
Oh,
ultimately,
for
again,
sure.
as you just mentioned there, it is for me practicing what's best for the client in advance of the show. So at least you have some analytics and some diagnostics already ran. So you're not running blind into that
Yeah.
fire. Do you know what I mean? In
Yeah.
peak week. And if in doubt, I say to people, be conservative, manipulate in small micro adjustments. Don't make any drastic decisions. And back to the whole McDonald's concept, for
Yeah.
me, that is just a coach looking like they are justifying by so like chucking something at the wall, and if it sticks, it works. And if it
Mm.
works, then there are clients going, "Oh, he's amazing because I look flat. He told me I look flat, and now I look perfect." For me, I just don't like the looseness of that approach. So generally, if it's your first ever peak, you know, playing it a little bit safer is generally better than rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Once you're trying to like fine tune somebody, then it's if you've already got diagnostics and some analytics already picked up, then it's utilizing those again with maybe some micro changes based on the visuals as well.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. And if we just talk about that McDonald's example again, what you got to realize is that sports always about culture, and all sports have got their own culture. And some things that people do in certain sports don't make any sense. So, like swimmers and cyclists shave their arms and legs to make them faster, right? But it doesn't make any difference, right? It's just part of the culture. And then there's magic foods, yeah, which are to be part of the culture. And I'm sorry, but the McDonald's and junk clothing is part of what I would call the basic bitch bodybuilder, right? It's the I'm part of being a bodybuilder, and now I do my peak week, and then I have my McDonald's cheat meal load after it. It's like you're so basic. That's what that is.
Yeah,
You're a basic bodybuilding
yeah.
bitch. Just like having cream of
I rem-
rice and thinking you're like an influencer and all cool with your cream of rice and your all that
yeah,
nonsense. That's what it is. And that'll upset some people. Well, do you know what? It won't actually, because those sort of people probably don't listen to this podcast. But
yeah. True,
that's fine.
true. So I've got before this, I wanted Dr. Andrew Chappell to give me some answers. I'm going to send some questions. We've sort of discussed some of these topics before.
Sure.
I feel we just want to try to land on some topics. Now, what we will do, I'm not going to be like giving you like a stopwatch 3 minutes, but
Okay.
I'm gonna keep that in mind. We've got a time for each topic.
Okay.
Try to get through it. So if I think that you're rambling on too much, I'm going to go. Let's close. Let's summarize, and then we'll
Right.
move on to the next question. Okay.
We can do that, right? So
So
you're going to throw some stuff at me. I mean, I recall you just said there the peak week. Let's keep this short, and then we've just done 15 or 20 minutes or however long on that. But that'll be a good segment for people anyway. Right, let's do this.
yeah. Okay. So I one of the main ones that I was sort of thinking about was what advice could you give to somebody who's also always associated diets with caloric restriction, and when they are attempting to go into surplus or gaining phases. So I mean this in terms of the psychology, getting their heads around the concept. So I'm sure that you've come across this before. Most bodybuilders, I think maybe more commonly with females, feel more comfortable in that deficit phase, watching the scale weight going down, as to watching the scale weight go up and body fat increase, maybe into sort of uncomfortable territory. So what do you feel about those topics there?
Oh yeah, that's such a good question. This comes up often in what you describe as the recovery phase of the
Yeah.
diet. So if you think about you've got 4 phases or 6 phases or however many you want, but very briefly, you've got the improvement phase whereby we're trying to make gains in terms of our muscle mass over the season, and we're trying to maintain our body fat levels. Then you've got the on season phase or the cutting phase where we're trying to lose the body fat while maintaining muscle. You've got your peak week, which might be an hour phase that we just spoke about, and then you've got the recovery phase, which is coming off of the diet. The recovery phase, we're trying to then add the fat back on, and then obviously mean, but not too much, and then we're trying to recover the muscle mass and then recover any physiological and psychological function which might have been compromised as a consequence. So people often struggle with giving up their on-season contest body because they're ripped and they feel good about themselves and it looks great, right? And women in particular, yeah, I think you see this more so with them, and the data probably supports this. Certainly, the research that I've done from surveying bodybuilders and their attitudes around food and body dysmorphic disorder, you see higher what we call body uneasiness amongst females just in general in the population. Yeah. Aside from bodybuilders. Now, what's interesting, right, is if you survey bodybuilders about body uneasiness, is that as they get closer to their ideal, e.g., their stage weight, body uneasiness typically goes down, which is kind of like the reverse of what you might think, right? Because you might think, well, people are pursuing this hypermuscular physique, but they'll never be happy, right? And that's the concept of kind of like bigorexia, if you like, or the Adonis complex, which is you look in the mirror and you're never satisfied. But actually, it's not necessarily true. So what's happening is you're going from this physique that you actually think, I look great, to, oh, I'm not going to be as happy. And the psychometric questionnaires kind of show that flip in terms of the mindset around this. So that's I suppose the framing around it from there. Now it depends on the individuals, yeah, because you get different types of people will cope with this better. But you have to make it clear to whoever it is that you're working with that you're going to have your off-season body and you're going to have your on-season body. And if you want to be the best athlete you can possibly be, you need to get used to the fact that that requires you to have some fat on your physique to maintain function and to progress and to make improvements, because being completely restricted all the time holds you back from being able to be the best athlete you can possibly be. So it's a mindset shift in terms of we're doing this for an athletic pursuit and rationalizing it from that perspective rather than an emotional perspective, which is I want to just hold on to this look. Or you can have that look, but the next time it comes around to being a competitor on stage, you're not going to have made those improvements. So what do you value more? Do you value being the athlete and all the physiological function and all that? Or do you value that moment in time that you look like this and holding that, even though that'll hold you back in the long run? So that's the kind of the framing of it that I kind of try and do. Now that's easier said than done, but if you can frame it that way and set goals and be person-centered and get someone to reflect on their behaviors, then that can be helpful. Is that how you would approach it, James? I don't know what you think. And that's quite a long
Yeah, I was
response to
just
your
no, I think that was perfect. That wasn't long. That was just the right amount. Yeah, I just wrote a note there while you were sort of speaking, and the question that I had written down there was, so does social media make gaining weight more difficult? We talk about this from a psychological perspective because once upon a time before social media, if you competed in bodybuilding, whenever I first competed in bodybuilding, I wasn't on social media, so you weren't sharing your updates or your striations for likes. Essentially, that was pretty much saved for the
yeah,
stage, and I trained in a studio, so nobody else really got to see my physique. So it was literally just it's easier to let that go whenever
yeah,
I think whenever people are putting values on, if I put a post up whenever I'm shredded, ultra lean, and I'm getting 300 likes, as opposed to
yeah,
whenever I'm off
yeah,
season, puffy and
yeah.
fluffy, even if you did the same post, you get 36 likes. I think that psychology really affects people and their willingness to let that condition go. And then at
I
that
agree.
point, whenever you're dealing with clients, I'm like going, look, before we go into this process, I want to ask you the question, which is more important? And this is whenever you realize what is the reason that person is doing bodybuilding. If they're doing it because they love the sport, they'll make the right decisions and they'll get over the psychological flaws that they have with that process. So they'll, go, right, if surplus is where I need to go, that's what I'm going to do in order to be a better bodybuilder the next time I walk on stage. If somebody is doing this because they're an Instagram bodybuilder, and then they're going to find that more difficult, I think, to
Yeah,
let that
no,
condition go.
I 100% agree. You're so right. You're spot on with everything you've said there. Economists talk about this, and they talk about incentive structures. And what you've described there is you've described two things. There's a social incentive, e.g., adulation, popularity. If there's a negative social incentive, you don't do something, e.g., you get told off in public for doing something and you made to feel shame, then you don't do that behavior. If you get adulation and positive feedback for what you do and in a social setting, then you do more of that, right? So that comes
Yeah,
to your point about being a social media bodybuilder. And then there's the other incentives that economists talk about, a financial incentive. Yeah. So if you're making a living and promoting yourself and being an Instagram bar, then you're going to do more of that sort of stuff. And then what you're talking about is you're talking about what do you value? What matters to you? Do you want to be the athlete? Then you need to give up on the body that you've got for the stage, or maybe find some sort of compromise, or do you want to be the social media bodybuilder? And look, there's nothing wrong with that if you want to be the social media bodybuilder, but you've also got to accept that that might not be the best for your progress. And then the other thing is, like, comparison is the thief of joy is a classic quote, and it's very, very true. Um, in fact, Joe, I can go off on a tangent. I'm going to leave it there. I agree, right? And hopefully that what I've said there supports what you're saying. I think it does.
yeah. No, I think that's bang on. Um, so I've a sort of a belief to do. So the next question, I've a belief that kind of aligns with this. And as we're diagnostic junkies, we love getting all that feedback from our clients.
Yeah.
So I've Connor who's competing tomorrow with the Muscle Contest Ireland, and it's the second show of the season. First season I properly worked with him as well. He was due to compete in September, and then his wife Maria, she fell pregnant. So he was like, James, can we do an earlier show? And I was like, this
Oh
is
yeah, I
not going
met
to be
this chap. He was
easy,
a nice guy. Yeah.
right? We've had to push this man so hard, harder than I would like, but I trust in our ability to converse with each other. He's let me know how he feels, any sort of physiological effects of those things. And so this sort of ties in quite well. He was actually round at my house today with an in-person check-in, and we were tanning him. Me and Adele were tanning him while he had his little sock on. So nothing weird or nothing to see here. But one of the things that I was sort of talking about with a few of the other clients the other day who are also coaches themselves is about scales and how important or unimportant they are, and does that change at any point during prep? So my question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are scales in the pursuit of a stage-ready physique?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important are scales? As a tool, at least higher than 8. I would say they're very important. Anyone that says that they're not
I,
is, I think, is talking nonsense. I mean, very,
so
very
so I'd set
briefly. You tell me your context.
I'd
Go.
set
Yeah.
no, but no, I'd set the question up as a pun, but you missed it. It's fine.
No, I got
Um,
it. I just stopped myself from doing it. It was
I'm
clever,
only
right?
no,
I
but
just didn't. I
like
was like, I'm not entertaining that.
to to we can remove the scale because I just thought that was a nice way to ask the question. But also, like, the reality is, the question is, how important do you think that the scales are, and does the importance of the scales change at different stages of prep? So, what's your
Yes
take?
is the short answer to that, right? Just to use myself as an example, I competed last year. I think I was about 78 kilos, right? And that was my best look around about that. But I've been competing for years, and I know that my best look is at about 78, 79 kilos is where I've been before, right? So I know when I start any prep, if I'm 88 kilos or 90 kilos or whatever I am, I need to be aiming for down at that end. I've just got to get down there, right?
Yep.
So that's super important. And if I weigh myself every single week and I'm getting tighter and leaner and the weight's coming off, then I know I'm on track getting down there. Now, it's not the only thing I'm doing, but it's very important. And then as I get closer to it, maybe it becomes degrees because I can be a little bit dehydrated. I can have more detail at slightly different body weights, and the look becomes more important. But until I get close to that 77, 78 kilograms, then I'm going by the scale to get all the way down there. Then I'm like, right, okay, we're there now. Now we go. So, like I said, when I said it was at least an 8, it's probably higher than that because it's going to be a tool that I use.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing. Is that kind of answered the question? And is that what you were thinking on it?
Yeah. For me, I think the importance of scale. Give your scenario, for example, going from 88 potentially to 78 kilo. Um, for me at the start, you're not going to see a lot of visual changes if somebody's carrying
No,
moderately
no.
high levels of body fat. So it's not the visuals really that you're going to be really focused on. So I actually think on a scale of 1 to 10, the importance of the scale at the start of prep, if somebody has got enough fat reserve, I would say the scale is a 10. This is probably one of the most important analytics that we can collect
Yeah.
because what we're trying to establish is what is a safe amount of rate of loss. And by safe, I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily talking about from a health perspective, but more for muscle retention perspective.
Muscle retention. Yeah.
With
Yeah.
more, with more body fat, we can potentially go into a more extreme or a higher rate of loss while still not sacrificing or sparing muscle tissue. But the leaner that we get, so say we start getting you in around sort of 79, 80, the importance of the scale weight diminishes a little bit, and now the importance of the visual starts to climb. And then ultimately in the last couple of weeks, unless you have to make a weight for any reason, for me the most important thing then is the visuals. It's the 10 and the scales is a 1. What do you feel about
Yeah.
that?
No, I agree. I agree. And that probably fits in. That's why I didn't give the scale uh, a 10 out of 10 in terms of importance, because leaving that little bit of wiggle room, because that is exactly how it goes. So if you imagine it conceptually, comes down like that in terms of its importance, and then the visual, etc., becomes more important. And what you want to do is you want to triangulate. So the measurements as well, taking like just waist circumference, arms, etc. These things can be helpful. I'm fortunate that I'm trained to do skin fold calipers, so I can do these with my clients. These are helpful, and I use these. And I know that if someone's got a body fat, a skin fold thickness of around about 29 millimeters, they're probably in shape. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I kind of know that, and that's independent of the scale. But no, I agree with you, James. Could I interject with a question here?
Of course.
I think you'll like this. So you get this all the time, I'm sure, as well, about this concept of insulin sensitivity and people dieting to improve insulin sensitivity. And it's, I think, a very nice technical thing that you can talk about to make yourself sound very clever, but in the real world terms, doesn't actually matter really at all. And I can see you're like, yes, I agree. So I was doing some research the other day there for a lecture I was putting together, and I came across one of my old papers, and I was talking about fat mass and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you this, right? This is data
Cool.
from a paper that I published a few years ago on bodybuilders getting ready for competition. It's 4 competitors, right? And here it's here, right? What we've got is you've got pre-competition, right? Here. These were literally done the week before competition, and you've got post-competition, right? You've got 3 competitors, competitor number 1, 2, and 3, and then competitor number 4. Competitor number 4 is a female, right? Now, we've got skin fold thicknesses here, and you've got body fat percentages here, right? So you can see 9.1%, 3%, 8.6%, right? This chap is very, very lean, right? And then you've got the female 14.3%. For context, ladies and gentlemen, a female around about 12% is considered essential fat for females. Around about 2.5 to 3% is considered essential fat for males. So this competitor here and this competitor here is they're not quite there, but they're still pretty lean. They're definitely at least fitness. This guy's shredded. This chap here you've competed against. I'll not reveal because that's for the sake of what's the anonymity. We'll keep that a secret. Right, so pre-contest, post-contest, right? So they've came off the diet at this point here, right? And I've got all this data. So I've got things like fat mass, lean mass, all this sort of stuff, systolic blood pressure, and so on, right? There's a resting heart rate of 41 in the female, right? Really interesting, right? This is some post-contest, right? Body fat percentage has increased. So the female's gone from 14 to 24%. One of the males has gone from 8.6 to almost 17%. The guy who's 3% has gone to 12%. The guy that was 9% has gone to 14%, right? This is
what's the time frame? What's the time frame between those two?
That is a month to 6 weeks post contest.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really when we could get them in. So some of these guys will be fully recovered from their symptoms. Some of them they're almost there. I mean, a good proxy is the fact that if you look at the blood pressure, for example, or the resting heart rate in the female, it's gone from 41 to 56. So it's just an improvement in the resting heart rate, right? This is the fasting blood glucose levels, right?
Yeah, quite often we see the heart rate diminishing just with lower food volume. Obviously, then in that post show, they're consuming more food, so heart rate tends to go up with higher food intake as well.
Yeah, it's a metabolic adaptation. It's a thermic effect of food.
That's true.
And then adaptive thermogenesis from the diet, right? Right. So there's fasting blood glucose levels, right? 4.8, 4.6, 3.7, 4.0, right? So quite low, right? But if you look at their fasting blood glucose levels 6 weeks after, once they've gained all the body fat, going from 9.1% to 13.2%, this guy goes 4.8 fasting blood glucose to 4.9, right? That
Yeah.
could actually just be an error in the machine, right? He might actually just be the exact same fasting blood glucose level.
Yeah.
4.6 versus 5, 3.7 versus 4.1, 4 versus 4.4, right? In terms of you were to look at that for a percentile increase, that's probably you're talking about a change in fasting blood glucose levels between gaining, in some instances, 10% body fat, 8% body fat, probably less than what are we saying, 3, 4% change in fasting blood glucose levels, if you're even getting that.
Yeah.
So the magnitude of change in the body fat levels is high. High body fat level change, minimal level of fasting blood glucose change. And the point is, in terms of what you would describe as clinically significant, e.g., will this make a difference to your health or not? Or will this make a difference to your muscle insulin sensitivity and your ability to build more muscle mass? The answer to that question is zero difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero difference. And for context, a healthy blood glucose level is considered 5.6 millimolar.
Yeah.
5.6. That's kind of average in the population.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think
like,
I think that nails it down. It's yeah, it's the same. Whenever I hear people talking about depletion to elevate insulin sensitivity, so whenever the individual is ready for carb loading, that they're going to be hyper responsive, they're going to have this high rate of glycogen uptake. That's going to lead to. I remember having this sort of explained before in terms of supercompensation. In general,
yeah,
the maximum amount of glycogen that you can store is X, but whenever you're in an insulin sensitive position, you can hyper store. And this is how it was, I remember, described. I believe, I'll not name the magazine, but it was definitely a magazine that I read. I might still have that copy. So then bodybuilders were now searching for this super compensated, glycogen saturated muscle tissue to create this level of fullness. And for me, there's this real sort of thin line that people are waiting, and that's why you see so many people spilling over whenever they go on stage. For me, like if you are using depletion, which I would do quite often with clients, I maybe deplete them for a couple of reasons. One, maybe to elevate the level of hunger, so they're actually ready to consume more food coming into those final few days. Two,
that's
if I'm
interesting.
going to
Yeah.
make
Sorry, go on.
I'm maybe going to use maybe a depletion of 2 or 3 days if I'm trying to just squeeze the last little bit of detail that I get
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
that
that's
person's
getting
physique,
leaner. Yeah, for sure.
right? Before, so that's what that depletion's about. It's just maybe a little bit more of an aggressive, short-term, very acute deficit that's allowing us just to scrape that last little bit of detail that we can before we just push enough food in to fill that physique and present it on stage.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Some more context to this, which you'll find interesting. I did this study with bodybuilders, right? I've also done the same study with strongmen. Now, the difference
Mm,
with strongmen, right, is that they carry a huge amount of fat. Huge amount of fat. Like you're talking BMIs of 45, guys that weigh 150 kilos plus, right? Terrible cholesterol, terrible um, blood pressure, terrible resting heart rate, phenomenal fasting blood glucose. Phenomenal.
yeah,
See if you've got muscle. Muscle is a organ which
for
will
sugar.
soak up glucose. It is
Yeah,
a reservoir, right? And just to your thing, like you're already insulin sensitive, right? You don't that depletion that we're talking about, you're already insulin sensitive. So ideas that like, okay, we need to do a mini cut to get you from 15% fat to 10% fat to increase your ability to build more muscle mass by improving that insulin sensitivity because you'll be able to build more muscle. It's nonsense. It's not a thing.
yeah.
It's just not a thing. And I tagged you
Yeah.
in this like last week, I think. I was like, oh, I must remember to speak about this. So hopefully that's useful for some folk.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, man. And as I said, like once again, you've done a lot of research yourself, and this is why, the audience and the people watching, it might be just one guy talking about his opinions. The other guys actually put these into sort of standardized testing models and been able to sort of see the outcomes of those. So it's great that we can have this kind of bro. That's why we've got the name. The two bros just talking about, you know, bodybuilding concepts, but we're able to pull some really good data out as well, man. So it's great for me to be on here with you.
Oh no, I want it for the record be known as a bro, right? I am
Yeah.
I am still a bro. Let's not doubt that aspect. Sorry, you had more questions. Should we do a couple more and then
Yes.
we should probably wrap ourselves up?
Yeah, sure. So, like, this is just going to go in alignment with that because I actually seen in that
Sure.
paper that you had, I think
Oh
there was
yeah,
testosterone and stuff as well. So, if you
yeah,
can
I
call that
did.
back
I
up if
did
you
have
like.
that stuff.
So,
So
with hormonal decline, we kind of know a lot of people that's been through this process. The people that haven't been through this process, I'll get you to answer what those effects actually are. So, with hormonal decline, what side effects do we normally associate with that hormonal decline through prep?
oh gosh, right. The main ones are that you're going to come across are testosterone and
Yep.
estrogen. So obviously the male sex hormone and the female sex hormone, you see they decline as you go through contest prep. And there's a tipping point. It's once you get past a certain amount of body fat, you see them being reduced. In fact, is this what we've got? I've got a table here. No, that's not that one. But you typically see it go down, and once you regain the body fat, it goes back up. So that's
Can you can
testosterone.
you call up that Can you call up that last paper that you had? Because I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
that
I
was
can.
interesting. You, you did
Was it on that
testosterone
one? Was it?
pre-comp, yeah, and you had the testosterone 4 to 6 weeks later.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, there we go. You're absolutely
Excellent.
correct. I thought it was on a graph, but it was on the table. So you can see this for yourself visually. And you can do, if you wanted to, you could do your bloods and get this done. So yeah, we've got down the bottom here. So you've got testosterone. That's it there. I mean, obviously we didn't measure testosterone in the females, right? We just measured it in the males. But you can see you've got picograms per mil, and then you've got picograms per mil here. So uh, participant number one, call it 70 picograms, um, more than double increase when they regain the fat. Competitor
Mm.
number two, 50 picograms. What's that, James? Are you good at mental math? That's almost 6 times
Just
increase in
over.
testosterone. And
Yeah.
then competitor number three, not quite as drastic an increase. So we're talking, call it 90, but you're looking at maybe, what's that, 130 increase. So that's an increase of around about magnitude of effect, 40 picograms increase on here.
So
So way more than
can
a,
I
a
just
per, sorry?
can I just interject there? So
Sure you
can
can.
I just clarify the guy it was the 3% guy that was 50.2 and went up
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
283.7. Cool.
He's got
That's
the
worth noting as
biggest
well.
increase. He's got the biggest
Yes.
increase in testosterone.
So
Um, we ran out of money basically in this study. So, because we would have done more. But the other ones I would have
yeah,
looked at would be cortisol, which is a stress
yeah.
hormone, a glucocorticoid, which causes your body to break down immobilized fuels, right? So you get a large amount of cortisol being released as a consequence of being very, very low calorie. And cortisol is obviously a stress hormone. What you see is you see the opposite. So you see cortisol progressively tracks up, and then post-contest, it would go down. Estrogen follows the same pattern as testosterone. You don't always see this, but sometimes you can see this. Thyroid hormone can decline over time, and that's maybe some adaptive thermogenesis. But thyroid is going to
Yeah.
be related to glucocorticoids as well, because it'll tell your body to release them to mobilize the fuel store.
Yeah.
So you maybe don't necessarily see that go down as well. So those are our main ones that spring to mind off the the top of my head. There will be other ones as well, but I just I can't think of any at the moment on here from there. So got that, and then I suppose while I've got this on here, um, is it decent on this? These are not bad graphics as well. These are psychological tests. Not necessarily so important that you know what they all are, but you can generally speaking see there's a pattern whereby we see a trending down in some of these tests, and
And
that's like
is these
uh,
uh is these the subjects? Is these the subjects that were you were monitoring the four subjects before the three men and the female?
yeah, that's what they are. So there are four
Yeah.
individual
Okay.
participants. James, you
Excellent.
love this stuff, I can tell, right? You're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
fascinating. And what's
Mm.
happening is we're measuring the first one up in the top left, that's body weight. As body weight declines, you can see the score declines. And then as body weight comes back, the score increases. So the first one is actually eating attitudes. So that's how you feel about food. So your
Yeah.
relationship with food declines as you get leaner, and then you come off the diet, it improves. So that's interesting on here. The next one, this is body image. So your body image relationship actually doesn't necessarily improve all that much with this one as well, and then improves post contest a little bit as well. And then what else have we got on here? You've got state and trait anxiety improving and declining over time as well. So that's what you generally sort of see. If you measure other things as well, like depression indices, again, people get more depressed as they go through it, and then they come off the diet, and that goes down as well because they're stressed. They're getting huge amounts of cortisol, and you're literally,
Turn this
like
off.
say, it's
Yeah.
controlled starving to death, right? It's
Yeah.
fascinating stuff.
I think it's incredible. Yeah, I think that was pretty much the the last question that I have. I think that this it's almost like we premeditated this. The last
Sure.
question that I had was then, so that being said about the sort of dietary phase, issues that sometimes arise physiologically, psychologically, etc. as well. What are the main methods then for hormonal recovery? So what do you think is like if you're trying to strategize that post competition phase, that immediate sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, what's
Oh,
your
yeah.
go-to top of the
It
list?
has to be body weight regain and body
Yeah,
fat regain. It absolutely has to. And that example of participant number two shows that clearly. The very clear relationship between body fat level at essential fat level compared to what you call a fitness level. Testosterone just bounces clean back. So you've got to get the body fat back on. And people ask me for like hard and fast rules about this, like what should my rate of weight gain be and all this sort of stuff? Should it be 0.1% or 5% a week or whatever? But by the time you're in the off season, you should probably maybe around about between 10 to 15% away from your stage weight. If you were at the absolute essential fat level, if you were still out of shape when you're on stage, then it's a different story, right? But you need to be at that point, and how you get to that point, that's the thing that I wrestle with. But you need to regain the weight, you need to regain the body fat. Probably the thing that I often see, which just boggles my mind, is you make sure you're consuming enough fat because there's a relationship
yeah,
between testosterone, estrogen, and saturated fat in particular. And bodybuilders are notorious
yeah,
for following low-fat diets. I mean, when you're getting ready for contests, it makes sense. But when you're in the off season, stop following a low-fat diet. I mean,
yeah,
the essential fats for a male from the UK guidelines are 95 grams a day. Don't eat less than that, right? Um,
yeah,
okay, so do that.
yeah,
Some other things you could potentially do. Deloading makes sense because I mean that's the same sort of equation of body weight regain. So if you reduce your activity, you will regain weight because by proxy you will have excess calories. So that's part of the equation as well and reducing the stress. You could measure your hormonal levels. You could do your bloods before the contest and then do them at a point afterwards and see if you're back to where you were. But that requires three time points. It requires when you start the diet, because you know what your healthy levels are, when you're at hanging, at the very end, and then when you're some point after, because how do you know you're recovered if you've only got before you did it at the very end and then at 6 weeks later? So you've got that as well. I wonder about supplements. The supplements, if I was going to recommend any, are the testosterone boosting ones, like things like Tribulus and stuff like that. Those are the times when those are likely probably to be most effective, if they are indeed effective. And I'm very aware that I'm being a hypocrite because I said they probably don't work in the last podcast, but
Well,
that's the time when they're most likely to be effective because that's when they're tested um, in the literature, which is usually in like hypogonadotrophic males, e.g., men that have got like testosterone issues. And you can see there, like that guy was probably from that subject example from the study, hypogonadotropic. So maybe taking a supplement might get him back there quicker, but maybe not. Maybe
yeah,
I don't know. That would be the time. I think. Does that answer the
yeah,
question? Does that align with what you think as well? I mean, what sort of rate of loss do you
yeah.
think makes sense?
So for me, like I look at practices I've utilized myself. I've also looked at, I've read different scientific pieces on this, but I think from a practical element, that's where you're going to learn best, and particularly as a coach. So you can take some of these concepts on and put them into practice and sort of go, right, this is how I felt. If I use like Wee and Wilson, one of my clients, as an example, last
Yeah.
year was probably in his first year of competing. He kicked some ASS last year. It was a pleasure to work with
Yeah,
the
it
last
looked
few
great.
years. He How he reversed out of his competition phase was impeccable. So again, we elevated his saturated fats. That was one of the first things.
Yeah, yeah,
We immediately took him back to maintenance in that first week, giving him a wee bit of flexibility as
yeah.
well to have some off-plan food because just the psychological element. But he was so disciplined. He was like, I don't really want to go too mad. And bear in mind, he competed in like high 50s, like 57, 58 kg.
So how much he
Within
was?
probably about,
Jeez, so
yeah, within about 6 weeks, he was back up to 40, 43, 4,400 calories. But it was
yeah,
all, good quality food. He felt like from a hormonal perspective, he could feel that sensation. Obviously, whenever your libido was affected, for example,
yeah.
he
Oh,
felt
yeah,
like
yeah. I mean,
everything
that's a
was,
great sign.
yeah, he was like back to essentially full throttle within a matter of weeks. And I think that discipline, I, one of the things I heard somebody talk about before was they were reversing back towards maintenance. And I was like, why are you reversing back to
Why
maintenance?
just go to
Because I don't want
maintenance?
to gain because I don't want to gain weight too quick. And I was like, okay, let me explain. So you're like sort of
Yeah,
going
yeah,
at maintenance, any weight gain is just going to be glycogen, water, osmosis, all those processes. It's not going to be increasing in body fat. Once we get you sort of conditioned and acclimated in around that caloric environment, we see analytically what's happening. Then we start to gradually increase that. And again, somebody talked about that rate of gain, 0.25%, 0.5% of body weight per week. I think that's
0.25.
maybe a
It's
little
like
bit too extreme.
fuck off.
Allow that person, if they're coming back and they're feeling better every week, and initially the rate of gain is a little
Mm,
bit more than that, that's absolutely fine. As long as the majority of the food is not junk, good quality foods, getting back into good habits as quickly as possible is just good. Again, that's where discipline will give that person freedom. They'll have
yeah.
freedom to feel better in a shorter period of time.
I think that's all really, really sensible. And that I like that. What I wrote down here though was I think with the approach that given what I know about the physiology and all that sort of stuff is, I suppose I think about framing it in terms of the food focus and reestablishing the healthy relationships and with food and so on. And I feel like if you take care of that, then the body regain will take care of itself. And I suppose that's how I
Yep.
kind of think about it. And that's why I'm kind of uncomfortable with you need to regain this much weight per week and all that sort of stuff. Because I think that's almost the wrong focus around it, if you see what I mean. But I think that approach that you're describing sounds spot on as well. James, shall we wrap it up there?
I think that's been a good one. So,
I
yeah.
think so, yeah. I think so. James, where can they find you?
So once again, James, maybe some week we'll actually get them up on the screen.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
you're
So,
asking a lot, right? I put it in the
come
comments
on.
section. You can in the description.
Yeah. So James underscore W underscore Melville on Instagram. I'm also the owner of the Compound Room Gym in Lisburn. I'm the head coach with Team Compound Prep Coaching as well, all on Instagram also, and I'm on Facebook with as James TCR. So people can contact me there.
Ideal. Okay, and I'm the Natty Bodybuilding Coach. You guys can find me at the nattybodybuildingcoach.com or dr.andrewchappell on the Instagram. We'll leave it there, guys. Thank you for your attention, and it's been great. And we'll see you for the next one. All right, peace out. Ciao, ciao.
Peace.